What's up, folks? Khalid Bey. First of all, please, before I get started, subscribe, like the video, tune in to Let's Talk, check out some of the videos I've already posted. I think the information is useful. I wanted to get on here today as a follow-up to a video I posted the other day. It was titled, "The Money is Funny." I'm asking your forgiveness ahead of time because most of what I'm about to say is off the top of the head. So I may pause at times just to get my thoughts together. Great dialogue from people in the comments, even dialogue from the pessimists have value. A great dialogue nevertheless, but I seem to notice that some people kind of took the message as a doomsday message. There was no doomsday message. If I tell you to not walk into a building because the foundation is shaky and the building is on the verge of collapse, that is not a doomsday message, right? That is saying, don't walk in that building. If you decide to walk in that building anyway, despite the warnings, and the building happens to collapse, then yeah, that will be doomsday for you, not for anybody else outside of that house. In that same respect, to give a warning about how the money is fluctuating in value and what that means for your ability to spend, it's equally not a doomsday message, but you can, by paying more attention, become one of the people standing outside of the house. And so this has to be thoroughly considered. But I want to go back a little bit. This particular topic here on the subject of inflation, is very hard to understand a video like that if it's your first time listening to that type of dialogue, or even if you've listened a few times without a real understanding of maybe how we've gotten here, what inflation is in fact. But I'll start here. I explained briefly in a video that inflation is simply established by the overprinting of money, right? When the money you print outpaces the commodities you have to purchase, then the money begins to decrease in value. As the money decreases in value, prices appear to increase, but it's not that prices have increased, it's simply that the value of the money has decreased. Right now, the Fed is saying that the dollar is performing well. You hear others in government saying that the dollar is performing well. But that is not the concern. So let me go back to the Obama years. The first popularized stimulus that was distributed, first of a couple, actually there's a few, where in order to improve market performance, the government gave stimulus packages, if you will, stimulus dollars to citizens. And it's great on its face. And so people got the money, and like clockwork, most of the people probably spent that money. Some spent it on very worthwhile things like their rent, their mortgage, food for their kids and the like. Others did other things with it that probably provided them no real equity and certainly no return on investment. So you have this, what I'm going to call a dry run of stimulus dollars. And I won't go into that, but a dry run of stimulus dollars where they gave the American people money, as I said, stimulates the economy because people spend, right? In order for the economy to be doing well, people must be spending money, right? The consumer price index, the CPI, must go up. It must be performing well. But then you go into COVID, where because of a worldwide pandemic, industry is forced to shut down. And as a result, many people lost jobs, businesses closed. You're talking about financial calamity, people not being able to pay bills. It resulted in a lot of people squatting, landlords losing money, ridiculous time. And so there was more stimulus dollars released during COVID, obviously more than what was distributed during the Obama years. And then you match that with businesses receiving some, what I'm going to call some support. I won't call bailout. Particularly tech, Google, Micron, and others receiving. Remember, Micron received like $6 billion from the federal government, excuse me. So you have this industry shut down. Businesses are down. The shelves in the grocery stores are empty. People can't get access to food. People don't have any money. So the stimulus dollars start rolling around, and there becomes this effort to also bail out business or to support business. Fed cut the interest rates, right? Now, the reason why you cut interest rates is to cause people to spend more appropriately, for businesses to borrow more. This all goes back to the banks. When the banks are not performing well, our market is not, or more appropriately, our finances, if you will, are not doing well. The banks must perform well. Banks can't perform if people are not borrowing money. If people are not borrowing money, then the banks are not earning any money. They're not making any money. Right? So when you have situations where the money is tight, the Fed dropped the interest rates to try to boost borrowing. So when businesses took losses, the businesses' number one concern was either get back to where they were prior to the pandemic or to be in a better space than where they were prior to the pandemic. And so businesses went and borrowed because the interest rates were low. And when businesses went and borrowed, and they were able to fund their operation or get that jump start into their operation, they now either had to bring people back, or when they were so big, they had to take on more staff in order to sustain what has become a very rapid resurgence in business. And so businesses go to start trying to hire people. They put out the bulletins, we are hiring. The problem is, people are getting stimulus money or unemployment, and for some people, the unemployment was paying better than their job was. And so people weren't going to work. People were like, no, there was no responses to the business call for labor. And so businesses, to entice this, begin putting up bulletin boards and everything everywhere, offering ridiculous salaries, no skills required, just an effort to keep their now new surgence going. And so businesses start to hire underskilled people, if they hired anybody, if they could find any workers at all. And by doing this, they attracted people incrementally, not at any rapid pace. So now we're coming into 2021, 2022, where the industry is starting to recover. People are back working, businesses are doing well, and getting toward the end of 22, going into 23, the Fed raised interest rates, right? Raise interest rates, and so now to borrow money becomes more expensive. Businesses can't borrow at the same rate because business has now become too expensive to sustain. When you have interest rates going back up, you've ballooned your business operation. You still have to borrow to sustain your business operation despite any stimulus money you may have received. The cost of doing business becomes too expensive. And so when you're getting toward, and forgive me if I'm going too fast, you're getting toward the end of 23, there's a decision made. And the decision is made that business is now too expensive. Coming into 24, the Fed makes an announcement that unemployment needs to increase by 4% by March of 2024. Unemployment, I want you to hear what I'm saying. The Fed stated that unemployment must increase by 4%. Now, why would the Fed say that unemployment needs to increase? Who would say that? Because we were on a bubble that nobody knew about that was arguably worse than 2008. And had we stayed on the pace that we were on, it would have likely burst, and we would have seen a recession way earlier than we would have liked. So ultimately, believe it or not, by the third week in March 2024, we have reached an increase of 4% in unemployment. Think about that. They said it needed to happen, and it happened. The whole logic of increasing unemployment is that if people don't have any money, then people can't spend any money. If you can't spend any money, you can kind of get a greater control over inflation, right? And so performance starts to kind of move back towards a homeostasis or stabilize. I don't think we'll ever reach homeostasis. And so this was the nature of what happened. The pandemic put us in a very, very bad condition in terms of finance and financial health. And so certain measures were made to try to reestablish that financial health, starting with stimulus, and you got to understand this. When the Fed raised or dropped interest rates 0.5% like they did September, October, I believe it was October, and then 0.25% after that. And forgive me if I have them reversed. That's not for you. That's not for me. This is why the grocery prices are still high. That's for business, right? You can't borrow. You got to understand this. Banks would prefer to loan a large amount of money to industry than they would to you, the individual. They have a greater risk loaning to you, the individual, than they do industry. And they know that the industry is backed by the FDIC. So if by chance, banks are supported by the FDIC, but their industry is backed and insured. And so they understand that if by chance businesses take a fall, government will bail them out. Government will pay that bill for industry if industry fails, but government will not pay the bill for the individual. So it is a more secure loan when you give it to a business as opposed to an individual, big business preferably. So the cut of the interest rates is not about the everyday person. The cut of the interest rates is to assure that industry keeps going. This is why it does not translate to you and me, the grocery store bill, so on and so forth. This is the thing that has to be understood. So while we are in 24 now, businesses are booming, people are spending money like crazy. There hasn't been any more stimulus dollars for individuals, but as I mentioned, after all the stimulus for individuals, you did have a stimulus of sorts for tech businesses, as I mentioned, Google, Micron, and others, to help them continue their business. Now, you had a jump, of course, in interest rates, right? Housing interest rates was very high, 8-9%. Some people, depending on their credit, was paying as much as 10% on interest rates. And so to borrow for everyday people became expensive, so nobody was buying houses because the money cost too much. People who are currently paying 3 and 4% interest on a home they've been in for X amount of years, they're not gonna sell at home only to acquire an 8 or 9% interest rate. Why would they do that? So people are not gonna buy. And so the Fed cut interest rates so that people, in business, people will go and borrow. What's going to happen as a result of interest rates cuts that you saw October and then again before the end of the year, I think we'll see another cut by the spring, if not during the spring, is that it will push people to borrow. It will push industry to borrow. And in this, you have a bit of a rinse and repeat. If people have access to money, they're going to spend the money. When industry have access to money, they're going to spend the money. Right? This will result in another oversaturation. And this is why I made the statement, and I'm not the only one, that by August, we'll be in the same position again, possibly worse. And so by August, because of what appears to be an effort to help by cutting interest rates, we end up with another oversaturation of dollars in the market. Dollar value begins to plummet. Performance and the GDP is down, the consumer price index is down because people will stop spending, and then you'll be looking at possible recession, leading into the fall. So I know this is all over the place. There's no way I can do a video in a respectable amount of time to provide any real chronological information, from the Obama years to now. What I will say is this. As I stated in another video, a person never knows by being told. Never take a person's word for anything. Always do your own research. Always play the skeptic, right? It's not good to be a person who just takes anybody's word at face value. Always be a skeptic. Always challenge what you hear. Challenge it not simply by talking to me. Go research. Go find the information. Arm yourself with understanding so you're not a person that's caught in a house that's about to collapse. I would much rather, as I stated to a person in the comments, I would much rather be aware of the environment than to be unaware and caught blindsided. So, this is the logic behind the idea that we may be in trouble in a year in terms of a recession. Housing prices are slated to go up in 2025. Then you hear the argument that housing prices won't go up in 2025. Merely only 2 weeks apart. Then you hear another statement that housing prices will go up in 2025. Here's the thing, if housing prices go up, then the loans will have to be bigger, right? And if the loans will have to be bigger, and they're cutting rates to make the loans more affordable for whoever, how is that not different from 2008, where people could potentially acquire loans that are too big for them to cover certainly for 25 to 30 years? And you could potentially see another bubble with interest rates fluctuating as they do, and the houses or the loans becoming too expensive for people, and then it results in mass foreclosure. Right? This is why you have to understand the logic of our environment. Let me say this as I proceed to close. You have taxation that happens, right? Government taxes are income, particularly W-2 income, which reduces the amount of money you bring home. But then you have an invisible tax called inflation. And the tool that is used to control inflation is raise interest rates, right? Raising interest rates makes things more expensive. And when things are more expensive, people become reluctant to spend, and you reduce saturation. And so what has to happen for the average person, if at all possible, they have to find what is unfortunately a sweet spot between income taxation and the invisible taxation that is called inflation. And in that window are the boundaries within which you can actually manage and spend your money. Anything that exceeds those boundaries will put you towards insolvency more appropriately. You have to get an understanding of interest rates, inflation, taxation, and where your sweet spot actually is. How much money do you actually have? And how do you make that amount that you have grow so that you can in fact spend beyond what was initially your boundaries because of inflation and taxation, and open up a greater wall of wealth, if you will, for you and your family? This is what I'm ultimately suggesting in the previous video. This is what you have to do. Otherwise, you will always be in a dangerous situation where your bank account is near zero or overdraft because you're going to go too far, because you're unaware of where the boundaries are. It's very similar right now with our money, like walking in a minefield, not knowing where the mines are. Of course, you step in the wrong place, boom, it's over. And so the finances is literally the same way right now. I said in the comment response, it's the unpredictability of the money that we should be more concerned about. And so we must do our best to work to predict where we can. Get an understanding of where our boundaries are and do our best to work within those boundaries to put ourselves in the position where those boundaries don't matter anymore. All right. Again, I apologize. I know that was a little all over the place. I'm pretty sure for many who will watch this video, it's not going to be any more clear than it was before. But the short of it is, an overstimulation of money, or when you have more money in the market than you have commodities to purchase, then the money is reduced in value and so the money spends at a lesser rate. Right now, I believe the dollar index is at 108.164, something like that. It's been pretty volatile over the last couple of years. Some people believe in and say, oh, the market is up. No, that's just people who are not paying attention. That's spending like crazy. And yeah, so the market is up. But at some point, the belts will tighten. You would rather your belt tighten by choice instead of by circumstance. So that's all I got for now. I appreciate you tuning in. Please like, subscribe, check out my webcast, Let's Talk. Find out what else is going on in government and politics. Stay abreast of what's going on, man. We all live out here. We are people who live in America. America is an interesting market, but you really have to understand it if it's your intent to win. I think anybody could win. You just have to want to know. For me, information is money, not the money in itself. The more you know, the more you can do, the more you understand, the greater your chances of reaching some kind of stability or greater for you and again for your family. Once again, I appreciate you checking out the video. Khalid Bey, Let's Talk. Check it out. Subscribe, like. Catch you on the next one. Peace.